What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Blood Splatter Chatter, another Sunday Fun Day double feature here in the middle of our summer abroad big summer event. We've been to Japan, we've been to Italy, we've been to South Korea, and now Wes and I are going to Austria and Hong Kong all in one episode. So, welcome back. Last time you were here, Wes, we talked about another fantastic foreign film, a wild one, 19
Yeah,
Possession. Today, we're doing Funny Games and we're doing Dream Home, both recommendations for you, both first time watches for me, and I fucking loved them both. So great picks. And how you been, man?
I've been great. Thank you so much for having me back. I think it's crazy that when we talked about Possession, that was before the remake announcements happened.
Oh, I know.
And now there's a remake coming out, and it's just like this weird niche little film is kind of about to go mainstream in a weird way,
Right.
which is crazy. But
I,
yeah, I love Funny Games and Dream Home. I'm so glad that you liked them both. I'm very
oh
excited.
yeah, I am too, man. Like I was like that's I've said it almost every episode that I think that we've done of this summer abroad event. But part of the reason why I did this is because really have just got I've just got into foreign films recently. I was definitely the type of guy, like up until a couple years ago, if it had subtitles on it, I probably wasn't watching it. And now I look at myself like, what a fucking idiot. Like, you know what I mean? There's so many amazing movies. And when we started this event, I'm picking these movies that I haven't seen. Other than Suspiria, I haven't seen like any of these movies. And I'm like, oh, these are bangers. People say they're bangers. And like as we've went through them, like, holy shit. I posted about it. I don't know if we'll ever top this run of movies. Ring, Suspiria, Godzilla Minus One, Parasite, Funny Games, Dream Home. We still have The Ritual, Pan's Labyrinth, and Martyrs to go. So,
Every
like,
single one of those is a banger. Every
yeah,
single one of those. Yeah, I love
such
all
heavy.
of those movies.
What's cool is like usually like we do like our big fall event is Horror Fest. I've joined this thing that my buddy from Pop Culture Philosophers does, and it's I save movies all year for Horror Fest. But in the back of my mind, I know that I want to do Horror Fest for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. But this summer abroad, I'm like, this might be the only time we do it. So there's no holding back. We've just been
Right.
picking like the biggest movies ever made from, and I should clarify, I've been saying from around the world. And my buddy did point out, he's like, you're really just doing Europe and Asia. We haven't
Right.
touched Australia, Africa, Canada, or South America. But maybe next year we'll get to that.
Hell yeah.
But I'm kind of thinking because the more accessible of these movies is Funny Games, 1997. People can watch that on Max. It's a fairly popular cult film at this point that hopefully a lot of people have seen. Dream Home 2010, I had never heard of it. It's amazing. It's hard to get. I found it on YouTube, but I figure we'll save that one for second, and we'll do Funny Games up front. So let's just go dive in with that one, man. Michael Haneke. This is the only film that I have ever seen of him, and he's just like in my mind after watching this, he's the type of guy. I know that you're going to school to make film. This is the type of film that like makes me want to make film because it seems so easy. Like the things he's doing, it's like, oh, he's manipulating me, but it's so simple in the way that he's doing it. But for people that haven't seen it, this is like as pure of a home invasion movie that there is. It's like this and The Strangers and Hush. You know what I mean? These really just straight up home invasion movies about this Austrian couple that's going to their fancy vacation home, and these two little douchebags show up, Beavis and Butthead, Tom and Jerry, Peter and Paul, whatever you want to call them, and they just come in and start screwing with them, and they end up like taking them hostage, and all hell breaks loose. But looking into it a little bit, Michael Haneke, interesting guy. Watched an interview with him earlier. And as I said, this came out in 97, and he wrote the first draft of it in 1967. So this was
Wow.
yeah. And like knowing that, it really like, oh, that makes sense. This is something that had been rumbling around in his brain. There wasn't the fourth wall breaking aspect of it. There wasn't a lot of the aspects that we see in this movie, but it feels like something that had just lived in this dude's brain forever. And like he slowly perfected until he had the chance to actually make it. But as
Yeah.
I said, first time for me, I loved it. What's your history with it? When did you come across this, and how was the rewatch for you?
So I think I was in like this edgy stage of life where I was just Googling like most dangerous films, most disturbing films. I was just Googling around for stuff like that. And this was on the list a couple times, a couple lists that I saw. And I remember, and honestly, like it was a list with things like Cannibal Holocaust, with like, just like the worst, like Salo, like what's it called? The Serbian
Serbian
film.
film,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it was like on a list with all of those, which now I've seen all of those movies. But like none of those movies I ever would revisit except
Hmm.
for like Funny Games, because Funny Games just like really struck a chord with me. And I think I was like maybe like 20 or 21 maybe when I first saw it, and I think I rented it from the library on DVD, and like I was just kind of blown away by it. I was like, holy cow. Like it was just like so different than what I was expecting, because it's not very,
Hmm.
it's very like slow paced and like methodical, and like it was also just really interesting because the like fourth wall breaks just killed me.
Yeah.
Like I'd never seen anything like that in a film before, and I thought it was just like really clever.
Yeah, it's just like, for me, that was the part. I mean, there's so many parts of this movie that I was amazed by, but the first time that they break the fourth wall, and they're playing a game of hot and cold where he's having her, you're warmer, you're colder, trying to find their dead dog, and the guy just turns around and looks right at the camera and winks. I'm like, bitch, the fuck are you doing? Like, and I honestly, just like in an interview with Michael Haneke, his intention at the first one is to get people thinking, was that what I think it was? Was he
Right.
winking at someone behind the camera, or was he winking at me? But we'll obviously dig a little bit further into the way that they break the fourth wall. What up, E? What up, Two Gun? Appreciate you guys popping in early. But for my overall thoughts, well, the thing I want to say is, like, I was just hooked on it right away. Watching it again yesterday, I don't think this is a movie that is made to be watched too closely. Like, I really think watching it the first time, you'll never experience that again, because
Yeah.
there's so many moments where, like, in a typical horror film or horror or home invasion film, they're way more predictable. You keep on waiting for the shoe to drop, or like different moments to happen that should happen, and they don't. And then different things. I don't know. It's just a very, very unpredictable movie. I watched it again last night for a second time, and don't get me wrong, I still enjoyed it on an academic level, but it didn't have near the impact for me that it had the first time, just because, I don't know, just because of how unpredictable the movie was the first watch. But
Yeah.
so tense. I found myself literally twice during the movie that I looked up and I noticed that I was like doing this with my hands, because I was like, what are they gonna fucking do? It's like they're so untrustworthy of antagonists in the film. But
Yeah.
I just want to ask you about, like, your thoughts on the introduction, the egg scene, pretty much, where the guy walks in asking for eggs, and just the way that they're just breaking social norms at first, that just make you like feel awkward, and how like impactful that is. Like, what do you just
Yeah.
think of the opening 15-20 minutes of the movie?
I think it's genius. I mean, it's so mundane, like the neighbors asking to borrow like a couple ingredients, like, but there's just like this underlying tension of like, you don't know this person's real motives, you don't know who this person is. It's not even really her neighbor; it's her neighbor's guests,
Right,
supposedly, and
right,
like it's just like so unnerving, like from the get go, because he's just like an unnerving character. He's just like in these itty bitty white shorts, and he's like got these white gloves on, and he's super soft spoken, and it's like immediately kind of like uncomfortable. It's like, oh, okay,
right,
here, have your eggs and go, please. Like, but then of course, those eggs were really just like the way to get into the house in a
right.
weird way, which is just, it's insane. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that kind of keeps me up at night, because it's like something as mundane as a neighbor borrowing eggs, could turn into, could, in a very rare scenario, turn into something like this. And
Right.
like, that's crazy to think about, like just how mundane it was, and how quickly it really ramps up, like from
Mhm.
that like start, like, but it doesn't ever seem like jarring or unnatural. It seems like something
Right.
that could really like feasibly happen because of all the social awkwardness that is at play. It's just so crazy. It's brilliant, honestly.
Right. I agree so much. Like, the direction is really what you feel. Like, the Michael Haneke is in complete control of every aspect of how you're feeling and what you're seeing. And just like the subtleties of it, where at first, like you said, he's so feeble looking, but I know in the back of my mind, like, oh, this is the bad guy, or this is one of the bad guys. So you're waiting to see, like, oh, how's it going to go down? The first like 10 minutes, when it's just those two together, or 5 minutes, or whatever the fuck it is, I keep on waiting for him, like, oh, he's about to hit her, or he's about to knock her out, or like take her hostage or something. And like at first, he's just so humble, and then you slowly see, like, oh, he's got gloves on. Like, oh shit. so that makes him much more scary. And then just
Yeah.
when she's cleaning up the egg, she's got her back turned to him. She's vulnerable, and you're waiting for it to happen then, and it doesn't. And just the way that, like, I was thinking about this a lot, like the golf club thing. He's like, "Oh, what nice golf clubs. Can I try them?" The fact that it's in the home, like if we were at a golf course, right? And someone's like, "Oh wow, you've got those clubs. Those are so great. Can I use those?" That's not nearly as weird, but there's something about doing that, being extra familiar, which is the word that they use in the domestic setting, makes it so much stranger, and that's weird. Like something
Yeah.
if you did it at the golf course, it's fine, but at my house, like it's so strange to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And
But
like, it's a little bit of a I don't know how much you want to give away. Are we? It's just a
yeah,
spoiler show.
yeah,
We're giving everything
yeah,
away.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a
Spoiler alert for everything.
yeah, it's a little crazy because it's almost like it's like the like a zone of interest type of like in the background moment too, because you hear the dog barking and then you kind of hear it, you like think you hear it whine. I don't even know
Right.
if you really do. It's so like you just hear it barking, then you hear it stop barking. I might be like filling in the slight whine in my imagination
I
for the
thought the same thing. I'm like, did
but
I
like
hear it or did I not? And then
yeah,
the two characters kind of look at each other like, did we hear?
yeah,
There must be something there that's very subtle. You
yeah,
know what I
it's
mean? That does make
crazy.
us think something's wrong,
It's
which
just
is
like a really like crazy subconscious way of like getting into your skin like right at the start of the film, like you know, and things aren't even really happening yet, like but
right.
you know, you just in the background and like under the surface, like oh, it's so good.
What do you think of? I'll call them Peter and Paul. I don't know their fucking names. That's one thing that's just cool about them is that they keep on casually just calling each other by all these different names, Beavis and Butthead and Tom and Jerry. And it's very. I heard someone else point this out, but I would be surprised if Christopher Nolan hadn't seen this movie and like borrowed that aspect for the Joker, the way that they tell the Joker's origin story, then it's never true. Like that's straight
Yeah,
out of this movie. They do this continuously. And the main villain, I'll call it the short guy with the brown hair. He's pretty much a Joker character, like an agent
yeah.
of chaos in the movie. But there's such great performances. Unfortunately, the tubby one has passed away since, and
Oh
the married couple have both all passed away. And they were actually
wow.
a couple in real life after this. Anna and Georg, they actually
Yeah,
got together after this in real life. But when especially the one that keeps looking at the camera, I feel like he's a guy that should be like in collage posters of great horror villains standing
yes,
next to Michael and Freddie and people like that. It's like he's so, to me, like he should be way more iconic than he is. But what's your kind of take on those two?
I agree completely. Honestly, like I think about the Funny Games characters all the time and just how iconic they are with their like Mickey Mouse white gloves, and they're just
Yeah.
so
Yep.
creepy. There's something really like clean and innocent about
Mhm.
their like image, but then they're just so like especially the brown haired one. um his vibe, his energy, his screen presence is so sinister, and like it's just like right from the bat, like before anything even happens, you just instantly get like this gross feeling from him, and he's so
Right.
creepy. And there's yeah, they're just immediately creepy, immediately red flags, like alarms are going off the second they step on the screen. They're just so good at that.
I would have had the red flag as soon as I saw the short shorts. I would have been like, I
Yeah.
don't know, man, those are pretty short. I'm like, put your hands down to your side. I got to test that. Do the old elementary school test. I agree. There's something, I guess, from what Haneke says, he told the victims to play drama and he told the antagonists to play as if they're in a comedy. And I watched it again after hearing that. They don't really come across as if they're in a comedy, but they do come across like they're in a different movie as the victims, I would say. You know what I mean? They're definitely, what
Yeah.
they're doing is they're never reacting to the pain and the agony and the suffering that the victims are going through. They're acting like none of it's, they acknowledge it like verbally. They'll say, like, I know this must not be easy and everything, but the tone that they have is that they give zero fucks the entire time about how they're feeling about it, which doesn't let the audience, like usually there's a little bit of sympathy and I don't know, it makes it more palatable. There's something about the way that they're acting that just makes it all the more creepy. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
definitely. Like this movie, it just it feels like Uncanny Valley, almost like the way that they are just the Peter and Paul characters, just like they just give uncanny valley. Everything about their performance is weird and uncanny and like just off. And actually, now that you mention that they're supposed to be in a comedy and like the other people are in a drama, like that's really interesting because
Right.
like they do kind of come across like kind of jovial. They have like this like love of what they're doing in a weird way. It's
Hmm.
kind of like a Clockwork Orange scenario. They kind of just have
Totally.
like that like vibe to them, and like yeah, that's really interesting to think about.
Well, it's just like the juxtaposition of what they're doing to the people against like the fact that it's a game, which is
Yeah.
another thing. It's called funny games and they are playing games with them, but it's not like if I were to describe this movie to someone or someone was to describe it to me, I would have a different picture in my head of what it is. It's not this like, oh, we're playing a game, sit down. It's not Saw. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I guess these are games that they keep playing with them. It's somehow more subtle than the way it sounds on paper. But I would say there's about 4 or 5 of these scenes that like are worthy of just like sitting down and breaking down, like really deep diving into. But the biggest one of all, and what I have to imagine is probably the most like iconic and memorable scene from this movie is, spoiler alert, is the death of the son. So we've
Oh
got the
yeah.
mom and the dad, and we've got little Georgie, right? And the way it goes down is the mom and the dad, they're like tied up in the living room. The bad guy with the short hair goes to make a sandwich, and we hear a scuffle going on. He kind of acknowledges it, and he just keeps making his sandwich. We hear a gunshot, but we don't know what the fuck has happened. And I love the way it just flashes to a TV screen. We still don't know what the fuck has happened, and how casually they're like, "Why would now that you've killed one, the other two are worthless to us?" And they very quickly say, "Oh shit, this is pointless to do now. Do you want to go? Yeah, let's go. Okay, fine." And now we're just left with our victims, and we find out, spoiler, it's the kid that died. Mom and dad are left alone, and we're left with this 10-minute single shot where the camera is just sitting on them at this wide shot angle where they slowly react to it. We can kind of get into that, but to me, it's just like one of the more amazing scenes that I've ever seen in my life. Although I will say, I do find myself losing focus. I'm not like laser focused on this for 10 minutes. I'm reviewing the movie in my head and I'm thinking about other things. I'm like, oh yeah, this is still going on. So I don't know what to make of that, but that's the truth of it. But what do you think of that scene, man?
I think that's one of the most horrifying long takes ever. Because when he starts crying, it's like the worst sobs.
Yeah.
Like it's up there with like uh Hereditary,
Yeah,
Tony
that's what I was
Collette
thinking.
sobs. It's horrible. It's horrible. It's the worst thing to hear.
And that's
And
5 minutes into the scene. It
yeah, and then it keeps going, and it's just like, oh, it's gut wrenching, and I think it is brilliant that it just cuts to the TV screen covered in
yeah.
blood, because like I think that's kind of what Michael Haneke was trying to say. It's like, horror entertainment is violence, and so we're watching like what it's like a race, isn't it? It's like a
Yeah.
car
Yeah.
race going by, and there's just blood streaked down the screen, and it's just like a really brilliant visual metaphor. And yeah, I mean, he was really. I actually can believe that he had this in his mind since 1967. Now that you mention that, because this is a very detailed, like, there's a
Right.
lot of visual metaphor in this film, and it's really that scene. It's the worst. Oh, it's so hard to watch.
It
That
really,
scene,
really is.
terrifying. That scene makes the movie one of the most horrifying movies I've ever seen. I think just to see them reacting to their son's death in real time is awful,
Right.
awful.
And I don't want it to sound wrong where I say, like, I think the fact that I lose attention, it says way more about me than it says about the film. His obviously his goal was to make us sit there and feel their pain. And although I do get distracted for moments, like I literally feel like I'm sure all of us have had like some kind of death in our life at one point. I feel those feelings of what I've had when I have personal like people that I've lost. Like it gives you this gut wrenching, like legit feeling that some if it was done another way, like he says he never wanted to do a close up because it would feel pornographic, which is kind of like one of those things that people might just fucking say. But it makes it so unique and so different that we're just sitting back there viewing them. And then as you kind of pointed out, part of his point of this movie is like asking the audience, why are you watching this? What is it about you that is making you want to watch people suffer and to feel these emotions? And that's kind of where the fourth wall breaking comes in, which we'll get into a little bit deeper. But another thing about that scene, like twice, both times that I watched it, when they The camera's just sitting on her for about 3-4 minutes. Finally, she gets up and she's tied up. She starts hopping over to the TV to turn it off, which I'm thinking, thank you, turn that fucking TV off. The shit's annoying. But
Yeah.
when she does that, she goes across her son's body, and it takes me like 30 seconds to then look up on the wall and see the blood stain that's now revealed. Like it wasn't in the original shot. But there's something about that, the way like I'm really focused on her hopping over to the TV, and both times it took me a minute. I'm like, oh shit. I don't know. There was something. And also, the first time I watched it, it took me like 35, 40 seconds a minute to see George Sr.'s feet laying there on the far left of
Yeah.
the screen. There's just something about it. Like it's done in this way that you keep noticing new things, including the fact that like right when it happens, I'm like, oh, they're coming back. But then the scene goes on so long and I'm caught up in the drama that it takes me another like 5, 6, 7 minutes to realize like, oh shit, they are coming back. You guys
Mhm.
got to get the fuck out of there, which is to me, that's some of my favorite, like that whole chunk of the film where there's 30 minutes left. You know, they're coming back. And to me, that's like, I don't know. I'm waiting for the shoe to drop the whole 20 minutes that you think,
Right.
oh, this is it. They're about to come back. And then the way that they finally do come back with the golf ball, that's like,
Yeah.
that's the best way they
Devastating.
could have done
Yeah.
it. So what do you think of that like chunk of the film? They're cleaning the phone and all like just that chunk of the film before they come back.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I honestly feel the same way. It's like so tense because I think the first time I watched this, I was like, "Is that it? Is it done? Like, are they gonna?" And then I was like, "No, the movie's not even close to over yet. Like, they're definitely coming back." Like,
Right.
and then I was like, "Holy cow, they're taking so long to get out of the house. Why are they taking this long? Like, what's going on?" And no, yeah, it was like so tense. And
It's the ultimate make you want to scream with the TV
yeah,
chunk of the film. You're like, get the fuck out of the
yeah.
house. Yeah.
Yeah, like just go, just get out, find the closest person you can find, get them to a phone, call the cops, like whatever you need to do, like do it. Like, oh my goodness. And then yeah, the ball drops and rolls across the floor and it's just like devastating. Oh my goodness.
You
Your
know what?
breath
It just
drops.
made me think of it's a lot like The Strangers, where it's like, well, what's the deal? Why couldn't they just get to the neighbors? Like, well, they're so rich that they could afford this privacy like that. That's the goal. They live
Yeah.
on like almost an estate where there's all this land, same as The Strangers. I don't know if I would call either of them estates, but you know what I mean? Like these big lots where you're way more vulnerable in a lot of ways. If you get over the security gate or you get around it, you can't get to your neighbors and all that. That's like way scarier in so many ways.
Yeah. And no one's gonna hear you screaming. So like
Right.
it's crazy.
Right. The other thing I really enjoy about it is they're split up and we've got the wife out, and the way that we don't know who stopped in the road for her. She gets someone to stop, and that's when we get the reveal. Not only with the golf ball showing them that the killers are back, but then they bring in the wife with them. And the way that they go straight into, okay, how old were you saying she was? 35. So it's just jumping right back into like where none of this has had any effect on them. They've never like they act like they've never left, and it's just continued.
Yeah. I mean, the movie like seems to do that a lot. It like plants some things to give you just like the tiniest little bit of hope, and then it
Mm-hmm.
immediately says, "Ah, you shouldn't have had that hope. Like that was worthless."
Right,
Like
right.
it's so funny. I mean, it's not, but it is. It's
Well, I find myself that's one brilliant thing about the movie is there are moments where you got to laugh. Like when the golf
yeah,
ball comes up, and even at the end when you get the last little look at the camera, there are moments where you're definitely going to chuckle in this movie with
yeah,
mixing the tones so brilliantly. Speaking of those moments where they give you a glimpse of hope, the fourth wall bit, man. As I said, we've had a couple times where the main bad guy, the Joker character, I'll call him, like looks at the camera. He asks at one point, like, "You're on their side, right? You're rooting for them. What do you want to happen?" This we haven't reached feature film length yet, but my favorite is the rewind bit where we get
yes.
this little glimpse of hope where the mom grabs a gun, shoots and kills the fat guy. Well, I call him fat. I'm like 80 pounds heavier than him, so I shouldn't say that. But they're calling him Tubby throughout it. And then the other dude freaks out, finds the remote, and picks up and rewinds the fucking movie that we're watching, and then erases what we just saw. Like,
It's crazy.
it's insane. What do you make of just like the idea in general of all the fourth wall breaking, that moment, or whatever?
I mean, I think that's what makes the film so special, honestly, is just the
Mhm.
moments like that because it's like it's it is kind of like commenting on horror films and horror viewership and the ethics therein and whatever. But
Right.
like at the same time, it is still just like an incredibly entertaining movie. So it's like, how can you be so mad at us, Michael Haneke, when you made a film that's incredibly entertaining? But that moment is just is unbelievable. Like that blew my mind when I
Yeah.
saw it the first time.
Me too, dude.
It just was like I could see why it would take somebody out of the movie and they'd be done with it from that point
Right.
on. But for me, that is what makes it funny games.
Me
That is
too.
what makes it so special.
I completely agree. What's interesting is when this movie premiered at Cannes, a third of the audience got up and left during the movie. And
Yeah.
that I could see that too. Because there's a lot of times where you're like, what is he doing? Like what, like exactly what he's asking the audience. Why are you watching this? I think a lot of people were like, yeah, I don't know why I'm watching this. And they just left. They weren't up for it. But for me, it's like, what's the other movie? And to me, this is so important in like good art. What's the other movie that's like that does it as artistically? And I can't think of another one that. Sure, there's other movies that break the fourth wall, but not the way that this one does. I've never watched a movie like that. You know?
Yeah.
What
It's
now?
a
Go ahead, please.
like it's a very like unique fourth wall break because it is kind of like, I don't know, it's almost like Rocky Horror Picture Show kind of fourth
Hmm.
wall break in a way where it's like inviting the audience to like participate, but obviously it's not Rocky Horror Picture Show. There's no fun, there's
Right.
no dancing, there's no singing. So
Right.
it's like asking the audience to participate in this murder of this family
Right.
instead. Like it's insane. It's a stroke of like crazy and genius all in one. It's just really unique in that way.
It's such an extension of like Hitchcock. It's so Hitchcocky, which I get a chance to say. I've watched now 6 Hitchcock films, so I'm an expert. So let me break them down. No, but just the way that he plays with perspectives, like in Psycho, halfway through, all of a sudden we're on the side of the killer. Or
Yeah.
like I thought Don't Breathe did a brilliant job of doing that, just putting us in the perspective of the bad guy, but so we end up rooting for them. It's just like in Parasite, which I assume you've seen Parasite. We're with
Yes.
these like pretty much terrible characters the whole time, but since we're through their perspectives, the filmmakers have asked us to feel for them. Not that we feel for the bad guys in this one, but I wanted to ask you, like, do you feel like Michael Haneke is like shaming the audience or just like presenting the question? Because I've heard people debate that. They're like, they don't like it. They feel like he's wagging their finger, like, oh, horror movies are garbage and you shouldn't be watching them. I feel like it's more just like it makes you wonder, like, why? Why am I watching this? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I feel like the like more like positive way of viewing what he's trying to do would be like, yeah, he's just trying to make us ask the question. But I have heard a lot of people say, and like, maybe even, and it's been a long time since I've seen like an interview or read an interview with Michael Haneke, so I can't
Mhm.
remember for sure. So maybe even something he said made it sound like he's like wagging his finger. But I mean, like,
Maybe.
he's made a few films that could fit into the realm of horror. So like, I
Okay.
don't think he like hates horror audiences. I think he really just wants people to consciously consume whatever it is that they're consuming,
Right.
and
I
I
like
think,
that.
yeah, like, and I think that's a very important thing for every audience member of any kind of genre to consider.
Right. No, I agree. The one interview that I watched today on YouTube, it seemed to be like a more recent one because he was a pretty old dude in it. He was, what was I trying to say? He was more like he had a lot to say about American filmmakers. Like it was a lot like, well, in America they would have done this, in America they would have done that. And watching the film, you can see he's playing with what we're expecting. The predictability of American filmmakers is a bit of what he was commenting on, aside from just like the bloodlust and why we're watching it. What
Right.
what what else is like? Have you seen some of his other films? Like, is there because that was the first thought that I had after finishing this movie was like, what the fuck has this guy done? And I probably should have looked into it a little bit more. And I need to see him. Like, has he done anything that's as famous as Funny Games?
I think Funny Games was probably definitely his most famous movie. His next most famous movie is probably Amour, which I have seen, but that movie is so sad. It's not a
Mm,
horror film. It's
mm,
just like two old people, and basically one of them ends up getting diagnosed with cancer, and he has to help his wife through all that while they're like in their 80s and 90s. But what's
mm.
interesting is most of the time if he has a married couple in his movies, they are named George and Anne.
I heard
Every
that. Yeah, I
time.
read that.
Yeah,
I
which is
like
really interesting.
Well, he also talks about how like the characters in this film are just stereotypes, and he doesn't say it like a negative way. Like that's part of his point. He wants to. He talked about like enjoying the fact that he's manipulating the audience with these stereotype characters, and then telling us that he's manipulating us, and then tricking us into to falling for it again, and then getting back into the movie and being invested, and then turning around and trying to take us out of the movie and putting us back in. And to me, he does it like ridiculously successfully.
Yeah, it's like it's kind of weird because he was trying to pull us out of the movie. I mean, like it certainly worked for some, I'm assuming, but like for me,
Right.
it's just every single time I'm like more invested. I'm like, oh, we're doing crazy tricks now. Okay, what's next? What's
Yeah,
happening next? I want to see.
yeah,
Like,
exactly. Well, it makes you notice, right? Like you can't forget that there's a filmmaker at work behind this. So, and it also makes you know that you are participating in it because they're aware of you and you're aware of them. So it just makes for a weird, unique viewing experience where, like, oh, he knows that I'm watching this. So he's fucking with me in a
yeah,
way that isn't always obvious. The other thing I just wanted to bring up, and I've heard people kind of say this as a criticism, we're like, well, it's not super impressive because he's not the first filmmaker to deal with these themes. And I'll be honest, first time I watched, actually the only time I ever watched Last House on the Left, excuse me, I was like, this fucking sucks. Honestly, I was like, this movie is not good. And like, I didn't get it. It's like, this is a movie I'm really looking forward to watching again now that I'll be honest, my buddy Robbie from Pop Culture Philosophers just kind of explaining what we're doing. We're made to root like, oh, these parents got to get their revenge at the end. And then they do it in such a heinous way that we're like, damn, look what we've been rooting for. It's like they've turned it around and like I've been rooting for her to bite this guy's dick off. What the fuck? We'll get into some similar subject matter once we get to Dream Home.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. Like Wes Craven, he's done that, and clearly he's a meta filmmaker, as he proved with Scream and Wes Craven's New Nightmares and all that. So I could see some influence from that. And Haneke's maybe doing it more on the nose, but in a more artful way, which is what I appreciate about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's a I don't know. It's a thinker, man. So the ending, which they've killed Georgie Jr., they killed Georgie Sr., and they just at the beginning of the movie, at one point, we see this knife. This knife is on this boat and it's falling, and we're the camera lingers on us like, oh, that knife's important. That's gonna save the day at the end. And the way they just dismiss it so quickly, they tie her up, they put her on a boat, she's trying to cut herself off, like, oh, a knife. They fucking throw it out, and then they just dump her completely unceremoniously. They don't even show us her going in the water. They just continue this like conversation scientific conversation they were having about matter and antimatter, and they just move the fuck on, and they forget our main character is dead back there. And then they go to the next house and they're like, hey, you got any eggs? And they look at the camera again, and we know it's just going to continue. So what do you think of the ending, dude?
One of the most insane endings ever. like it's not insane and like the wow, so many crazy things happen.
Right.
It's so insane because it's just like bloop, it's over. Like what? And like honestly, like it's almost comical just how she goes over the boat. Like in a like not in the sense that the character's dying, but just in like they're like bloop, whatever,
right?
Right. Like the movie's over. Like, what more did you want? Like, there's literally 5 more minutes of runtime. We don't have time for a whole fight. Like,
right. And I did catch myself looking at the clock a couple times, not wondering like when's this shit gonna get over. We're just like, how much time do we have to wrap this up? How are they going to wrap this up in 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Did you? This is something on the second time watching. I thought more about. It's like they're clearly not supernatural characters, but they almost feel like it. The way that it's 8:00 in the morning the next day. We are kind of led to believe that they're just going to continue and do this exact same thing to the family next door or down the river or lake or whatever it is, and they haven't slept. So like, and they're just as happy. They do eat, so we know that, but it is weird. It makes them, just like I said, pure agents of like supernatural chaos in a way, in a very non-supernatural film.
It's almost like a Michael Myers type situation, you know. They just keep going no matter what. They just keep going.
Right. You don't imagine Michael Myers going and taking a nap between babysitters and shit.
I don't think he ever sleeps. He's always standing or walking.
Well, well, let's go ahead and we got another film to get into. I don't want to keep you too damn long, so let's go ahead and if you got anything else you want to throw in there and rate the film 1 through 5. You can do points too if you want to do like a 1.25, 1.5. I don't think you're gonna go that low, but you know what I mean. So what do you think, brother?
This is a 4.5 out of 5, 5 out of 5 film for me. I keep coming back to Funny Games, which is crazy because it's a lot of people like, oh, I watched that once and it disturbed me. I don't ever want to see it again. But no, I keep coming back to it because it's so artistically well done.
Yeah.
And it's so brilliantly performed. And there's just so much about it that is really thematically rich. And I love that about it. And I will watch it like 100 more times probably before the end of my life. Fantastic movie.
Have you seen the remake? Because that's something I should have mentioned. There was a shot-for-shot remake made 10 years later with Naomi Watts and Tim Roth as the protagonists, directed by Michael Haneke. Same words, same shot. Have you seen that?
I haven't, but I think I want to eventually.
Me too.
I've seen like clips and bits, and like it kind of rubs me the wrong way just because I know the Austrian version so well.
Right.
Not because it's bad. Naomi Watts everyone in that film is brilliant, I'm sure. And Michael Haneke obviously is brilliant. But like it's just something about it. I don't know. I think it's just because it's too familiar in a different way that watching it, the same thing but different feels weird.
Right.
And like it just doesn't. But I will watch it one day, I'm sure. And
me too.
Once I'm able to get over that.
He said like in the interview that I saw, he's like, a lot of people have criticized me for doing it and just dismissed it as a shot for shot remake and some bullshit. He's like, but nobody ever asked the question, why did I do it? And then I'm sitting there like, okay. And he's like, and he doesn't answer. I'm like, well, I fucking still don't know why. But I guess there is part of it. Like it didn't do well in America. He thought enough people hadn't seen the movie. And I think even the remake didn't do like quite as well as he thought that it would. But I'm super curious to see it just as like an oddity of strain. Like how many movies have been remade by this same director, different cast, shot by shot, word for word. I don't know if any have. I know Psycho was done like that, but clearly not the same director, What's also, you know what? Now that I think about it, another Naomi Watts film. I don't know if it was shot for shot, word for word, but Ring 2, The Ring 2 was remade by the same director, different actors, which is funny because I just watched Ring and Ring 2 with Naomi Watts, and then I just randomly watched King Kong, and I'm like, oh, Naomi Watts again. I forgot that was her. Yeah. And then I'm reading up on this. I'm like, God damn, she just did like 3 massive remakes in a row. Ring, King Kong, and then Funny Games. Like it's a strange little. And then I've never seen or heard from her since. I don't know.
She's like the queen of horror remakes. Yeah,
it's wild, isn't it?
Yeah, it is pretty crazy.
I'm gonna go right there with you, man. When I first watched it, I was like, dude, this is a 5. I gotta give it a 5 because it's just I love just the uniqueness and the creative choices. It's such an interesting film and so different than everything. But like I said, there are moments in it, not just that one long scene where I find myself like losing attention, but there's quite a few scenes that like this is being dragged on so long that it's just, I don't know. There's something about that. That'll be the only ding that I would have to give it. But also that's probably more my fault than it is the filmmakers. If I didn't have TikTok brain, if I wasn't just doing Haktua over in my fucking brain over and over, then that I might be a little bit different.
I mean, watching it a couple times in a row, I think will have that effect too. The long takes don't have the same effect if you've just watched it.
It's not a movie. And you know what? Something else I was going to say. Excuse me, Jesus Christ! I have a cough button for that. Let me go ahead and use. There we go. That was a big one. The fuck was I gonna say? Oh, like people that watch the show, like I say it all the time. I always watch everything twice. I feel like I have to watch it twice before I review it, but I did not have to watch Funny Games twice. I did, but I knew that I did it, and part of it was the scenes take so long. You spend so long in each scene that it's so memorable. It's like, there's the kitchen scene, there's the hot and cold scene. It's like, I could just like run through the entire movie in my head, and it's I don't know. There's something to say for that too. It's just like such a memorable ass movie.
Yeah.
But 4.5 from both of us. banger, and one that I'm really glad that you put on your list when I was asking about foreign horror films. So, my friend, let us dive into Dream Home 2010, directed by Pang Ho Shun. Hopefully, I'm saying that somewhat right. And I rarely do this, but I'm actually just going to read. I hate doing it, like setting up movies, so I'm just going to read the synopsis right here off IMDb. Chang Lu Shun is a young, upwardly mobile professional finally ready to invest in her first home, but when the deal falls through, she is forced to keep her dreams alive, even if it means keeping her would-be neighbors dead. Which makes this movie not sound quite as deep as I think it is. It sounds more corny than that. This is one I'd never heard of. I never heard of it like spoken about it on any list. And when I asked you, like, hey, what are some of your favorite foreign horror movies? It was number one. It was the first one you put up there, and I'm like, I googled it. I'm like, Hong Kong slasher. Very interested in that. But one of the little fun facts that I picked up, this might be something that a lot of people are like, yeah, Vern, where the fuck have you been? This is how it is in China. I didn't realize like the rules and regulations that China had in place, like since like the 1930s, that you can't have supernatural elements in your films without Scooby doing it at the end. You can't have like fucking ghost stories and things like that. You have to like, if you have it, you have to like disprove it by like technology or whatever. You can't have supernatural shit in your films, which is why like Hong Kong slasher game is so strong. And that's what we get in this. We get I would say a thematically rich slasher movie that's a character study with fire fucking kills and great cinematography, solid acting, and it's just fun. It's just a fun movie that does make you think, and it does have something to say, but it gives you like the everything that you want in a slasher movie. The kills are top notch. But so I thank you for introducing this to me, and I hope people out there like that are watching this, if you haven't seen this, fucking go check it out. Like, seek it out. It's not streaming anywhere at this moment for free, but it is on YouTube. I bought it for $13, and I'm glad I did. So, when did you come across this, and how was the rewatch, dude?
I
Rewatch.
must have came across it around the same time I came across Funny Games, just googling like horrifying movies, because I think I remember somebody posted the opening scene when she kills the security guard
Mm-hmm.
of the building on some forum with like disturbing kills or whatever that I was googling in my edgy days, and I just was like so impressed with the scene. I was like, wait, that was actually like really good filmmaking on top of being
Right.
like super violent and disturbing. So I clearly got to look this movie up. And I don't even think they posted the clip with a title, so I actually had to go ask Iran, "Hey, do you know what this movie is?"
Which is
Said
an
the scene.
awkward. Hey, yeah, that's an
Yeah.
awkward.
Hey, watch this horrifying scene with like terrifying, gory violence, and tell me do you know what movie it is? But yeah,
Yeah.
eventually I found out where it was, and it. I can't remember how I watched it the first time, but I think it's occasionally streaming. I think it was on Shutter at the
It
time.
was. If you Google it right now, it says it's on AMC Plus and Shutter. Probably Shutter. It
Yeah,
shows up for both. It's not. I sent AMC Plus a stern email asking them why it wasn't on there. But
right. Like, bring
still,
this movie back. Let me watch it.
yeah,
But
for real.
I was just kind of blown away because it is so much more violent than you would expect, because it's way more extreme than a lot of slashers. But
Right.
and then it's just also like really smart and thematically rich, and it's very you really feel for the character even though she's insane by the end, and
It's
like
crazy.
somehow they've managed to do all that, and like it's a kind of like a whole life story, because you see her when she's very
Hmm.
young as a kid, and why she wants this Bayview building and who instilled that desire in her, and like it just keeps going from there, and it's so well done. And
You don't
the girl
expect
that
that
plays,
either. After they're
yeah.
showing you like the deaths that they're showing, and then they do this like nice flashback to this cute little kid. You're like, oh, this is what I'm getting into.
Yeah.
It's super unique for a slasher movie in that way.
Yeah. It really does take you by surprise. You never see it, you've never really see it unless you're counting like Rob Zombie's Halloween remake.
Dude, that's so fucking crazy that you brought that up. I was gonna bring that exact movie up to you.
That's
Like,
hilarious.
and I like that movie a little bit more than a lot of people. I'm not a fucking like diehard, but I guess I'll just ask you now. Like, I was comparing these two movies. One of the criticisms that I saw about this film, that I didn't look too deep into it. I was just reading the Wikipedia, and it was like reception. In that, it was said there's some reviews that pretty much have a problem with like the mixing tones, I guess you'd say, like the drama parts and the flashback and all that with the over the top kills that we would get in pretty much like an 80s slasher movie or like a Terrifier movie almost. To me,
Right.
that's one of the things I love about the movie. But like, okay, if you look at Rob Zombie's Halloween, it has that like where it's like there's part of the story that's, or the whole story is like drama. You know what I mean? It's not, there isn't the creative slasher kills in it. He goes for a more brutal like realism when it comes to the kills. But I like the mixing of the tones here, where there's realism in the one section, and then it goes for crazy over the top, like suspension of belief fucking kills. And the other moment where dicks are flying around the room and things like that. So it's like, I don't know. I really appreciated that. What, I don't know if I feel like I'm almost cutting you off. You had a point you were going, but what do you think of like those two mixing tones? Do you have any issue like that or no?
No, I think it works really well with this film, and I think part of that is because the main character Lee Sung is so well written,
Yeah.
like, and the actress plays her so well, like, and you really kind of want to see her succeed, not necessarily in killing everyone in the building, but
Right.
even though it's interlaced, and they're showing her killing everyone in the building at the same time they're showing what led up to this moment.
Right.
You still kind of hope in the back of your head that she's gonna get the building, and like that all the killing was just like her fantasizing or something, like, oh, just kidding.
Right.
I mean, that would be a shitty movie. Like, oh, it was just a dream. Like, what?
Yeah, but still, like,
but that's kind of what you hope for. You want her to get the offer. You want her to get the apartment that she's trying to get.
it's the same thing where it's like they put you on the side of her, and you have to keep questioning yourself, like, damn, why am I rooting for her to kill these mostly innocent people? Like, a
Yeah.
lot of them, like they do show them doing like shitty things, so that we can at least get on the side a little bit, like slasher movie version, although these people deserve to die.
Yeah, the
But
party guys. Yeah,
yeah, they're like, touching this
blow
girl while
coke in her
she's
nose.
sleeping. Yeah, to me,
Mm.
don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that was a. It's weird when you say, "Oh, that was one of my favorite moments," when you're talking about something like that. But that was an interesting thing to do. It's like, oh, this
Yeah,
girl's passed out. We want to have sex with her while she's sleeping, and they blow coke up her nose to wake her up. It's like, oh my
wild,
god, that's so
insane.
disgusting.
Yeah, insane. Yeah, those guys definitely deserve to get murdered.
Right, in the way that they did too. Nobody
Yeah.
goes out. Nobody goes out easy, man. So let's get into that a little. We'll stay on the kills for a second. But as far as, yeah, what was your, there's 12 amazing kills in this movie. I wrote them all down. I think all of them are pretty fucking awesome. But what are your just thoughts, like if you have a favorite or just the way that the violence is handled in the film?
Oh, my favorite kill, I
Again,
think
favorite.
the one that disturbed me the most, I think, has to be the lady who is pregnant and she
Yes.
like falls on her stomach, starts like bleeding out of her legs and from
Mhm.
between her legs, and then she gets vacuum sealed to death. Like that one really is very disturbing to me.
Dude,
And then
there's no workaround on how I can't figure
yeah,
out how they did that without her having to be out of oxygen for about 30. She's got her hands tied behind her back, her
yeah.
legs tied up, and they are vacuum sealing her fucking head. She can't breathe. I can't think of a way that
Unless
they
it's
would
like a really good mannequin that they
Oh,
have the thing over, like a really realistic mannequin that they are puppeting to like writhe around. But I don't
that
know,
would be
it's too
crazy.
realistic. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
very
because you see her
realistic.
eyes and you know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's an
yeah.
amazing performance. I don't know. I would
It's
really love to know how
Yeah,
they
it's
did that.
so disturbing. Yeah, they did really good. I mean, all the special effects look really good.
Mhm.
The guts hanging out of that one guy,
Fucking
the
awesome,
drug
dude. Just
dealer
so
is
fucking
so
good.
nasty.
My
Yeah.
favorite there is when she's trying to, at the end, she's trying to get the gun in
Oh,
his mouth.
yeah.
He's still sitting there with his guts out. He won't open his mouth, so she reaches down and grabs his guts. And, yeah!
Yeah, it's so awful. And like it cracks me up. It's like this super morbid little bit of comedy when he's like before that happens, when he's like sitting and she's gone to kill somebody else in the bedroom, and he's like he brings the joint up to his lips and it has gone out and he's like shit, it's out.
You know what I
It's
thought
so
they were gonna do?
sad.
I thought they were gonna have him like take a hit and then the smoke
The
come out
smoke
of
would
his
come
gut.
out of his stomach.
That
That
might
would
have
have
been a
been
little
so
bit
funny.
too comical for him. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I don't know how he's inhaling with his
That's not the same thing.
torso open up, I mean, I
How
guess
is
his
he
lungs are still
alive?
intact.
He's
Yeah, I mean, he
alive for
stays
like
alive
15
for
minutes.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. He should be dead. It's wild.
Another one that's, and again, like even just describing some of these, I should throw a trigger warning out there for some people. But there's one where two people are having consensual sex, doing doggy style, and she cuts the guy. First of all, the way she's just stabbing him through the back, that was already, I was sold. That was an awesome kill. Just
Right
like,
as he's orgasming too. So it's
yeah,
like, she doesn't even notice because the screams just sound like
she
so
chops his dick off, blood squirts all over the back of this young woman, and she says, "Oh, that was a lot." You're like, "Oh
so
God."
awful.
It really is. And then she takes and throws the dick on the pillow next to the girl. Now, while I'm saying that, like, I guess I could say what we end up finding out is basically the reason I honestly didn't fully put it together. I thought she had snapped and she was killing these people. I didn't get like what we're going to learn at the end of the movie. Spoiler alert, is that she's been killing the people in the building in order to get the price down so that she can move in there. And it's like, okay, that's understandable. And everything that we see happening to her, where it's like all these financial things, it's pretty much really, again, similar to Parasite, where it's like,
Yeah.
look what happens to people when you put the pressure on them. This is, when people do bad things, they're not necessarily always bad people, and it might have been other outside pressures that made them that way. But the fuck was I going with that? The fuck was I even just talking about? Fuck was I saying? Oh my God, brother. I might have done drugs at one point yesterday. Maybe that's lingering today, but I haven't today. I can swear. This beer is all I've had. I don't remember where the fuck I was going with that. Outside pressures. Oh, this is where I was
Yeah.
getting at. I don't fully buy that the character that we see in the dramatic parts of the movie would do the things that she does in the kills. Because it's one thing, it's like, oh, I'm just gonna go and kill these people and make it look like they were murders and get the price down. She's enjoying it a little bit too much. She doesn't have to kill them in like the really mean-spirited ways that she does. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, she does go all out. It's almost like her, like, just like, I'm so pissed at you because you can afford this building. Like, fuck
Right.
you. Like, I got to take
Right.
it out on you. Like, it's so wild. But yeah, I mean, like, I think I wouldn't believe it if it weren't for the fact that, like right before that night happened, like, she literally, like, watched her father die and didn't help
Right.
him. And like, I think that just kind of like solidified how demented she was at that point,
Right.
and that
So
she was gonna get this flat no matter what.
I love the way that they show that, where I think he says in a scene before that, just let me die or whatever. But at the time, he does not want to die. He's sitting there and he can't breathe. And the way, like, what they show us on camera is him reaching out and grabbing her shirt while she's sitting on the bed. The way she grabs her shirt and rips it out of his hand and just kind of turns away from him is
Yeah.
so, like, I don't know. It's just such a great way of showing the decision that she's made. It's an interesting look at it. But speaking of the look, dude, just like in general, it's like I would say it's like a grungy movie, but it doesn't look grungy. It's like beautifully shot. It's got like a sheen to it. It's colorful, like the color palette of it. But
Yeah.
what do you think of just like the direction, the cinematography, the look of the film?
I love it. I think it has a very sleek look to it. It's
Mm.
very like like what you said, like the color palette, they really just were using all the colors. There's like, I feel like it has kind of like a greenish look to it.
Mm.
And there's like also one shot that really stands out to me when she's on the bus with her friends and they're all talking about how they want to go to Japan for like a vacation. And
Hmm.
they're like, use some money. You've saved up some money, right? And she goes, no, I'm saving up for a flat. I can't do that. And the shot of the bus going down the bridge is like a weird tilt shifted shot. So it
That's
looks like a toy set almost. And
that's
it's just
funny,
like,
dude.
it's so
My
interesting.
my wife had sent me something recently where it was like a whole thing of that where they looked like toys, but like this is real life, but it looks like a toy.
Yeah.
What it is, like, okay, they keep on going to these landscape shots where they're showing these buildings, and normally you don't see like there's like a depth of field, like a shallow depth of field. For I know you know what I'm talking about. For people that don't, like, there's you can set your camera settings to where there's more in focus and less in focus. And usually with a landscape shot, you're setting it to where everything's in focus. And the way that they shallow the depth of field makes it look fucking weird and like a toy. And on that specific shot, like it's blurred out here and here, but when the bus goes through
Yeah.
the clear spot, it makes it look like a toy for some reason.
Yeah. It's just, yeah, because when you film miniatures super close up like that, you do have like the shallow depth of field just naturally because
Right,
you're
right.
super close to something. But like in order to do something far away, they have like the special lens that like actually like
I didn't
tilts
think
in a
of it
weird
like
way,
that. That is it.
and
Yeah.
and that's what makes it everything kind of look like a toy. It's so weird, and I think that's one of the only shots in the movie that's like that. But it's like it
Hmm.
always stood out to me, and I was like, what is it trying to say? Why
There's
is that
other
shot like
ones
that?
where they're doing it with just the buildings, where it's not like
Yeah,
there's not like it doesn't look like a toy because there's not like cars going through it. I was taking it as a way to show her like distorted view of the world, and like you remember at the point like after basically the moment that she snaps and she finds out she's not going to be able to get the house, there's a shot of her outside and it's just her in focus and everything else is
yeah,
super blurred out, and it's just like to be like disorienting or whatever. There's a shot that for whatever reason really really stands out to me. So interestingly done. It's from outside of the apartment building and the lights on, so you're seeing in the apartment building, and then the light goes off and spam, it's just cityscape that you see in the window, and then she enters the view of the window,
yes,
and there's something so cool about like those three elements coming together, and it really is like reflective of her like view of the city in such a
yeah.
strange way. I guess we've hit on a lot of what I wanted to talk about, like story structure and theme wise. But did you have anything? I mean, I guess it is pretty clear, like what they're talking about. It's gentrification. They're talking about the healthcare industry, all things that we can really relate to. But did you have anything you want to add? Just that whole section of the story, the writing, the structure, all that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's brilliant. I think it's a really like impactful satire because it just has that like
Hmm.
that bite to it. It's very biting, and it's also just incredibly graphic and violent, which
Right.
makes it a lot of fun for, you know, horror hounds. Um the ending really uh like just blew me away. Like it's just such a mean ending because like
Hmm.
first off, she's like moving all her stuff in, and her bed doesn't even fit in the room.
I know. I know. What is up with
And
that?
then she's listening to the radio, and it's all like, "Oh, the housing crisis that happened in America is now spreading global, and micro
Right.
prices are dropping everywhere." And it's like, if you just waited a week, you could
I
have afforded
know.
that.
I know.
It's just like so crazy. Oh my goodness.
Right. It's just like ironic in a way that's just like, oh no. And honestly, like, why do I feel like why am I rooting for her still? Like, look at
Yeah,
what it's really similar to what we were just talking about in funny games. It was something this is like a random thing about funny games that I wanted to throw in, like how the fact that where they unceremoniously throw Anna overboard, part of that, what it does, it makes it we are disappointed. We're like, whoa, we wanted to see more. And it's again
yeah.
him being like, see, you sick fuck.
Yeah,
You got me,
exactly.
Haneke, you son of a bitch. um, uh, yeah, man. I guess it's like what I said. Like most slasher movies, you know, what I mean, you're not gonna have, especially. I guess there's different kinds of slasher movies. There's the character study ones, like this one, like American Psycho, like May from 2002. Have you ever seen that?
I haven't.
You got to
I need
watch
to
it.
see May, yeah.
I think you would like it, man. I mean, they're obviously they're going to be more thematically rich than your typical supernatural Freddy slasher. They're not getting in, too deep of the themes of the child play franchise. But the character study ones, this is the area of the slasher world where you can get a little bit deeper with it. It never feels fucking preachy and all that. I'll be honest, it took me till I did watch this one twice too. The ending that you pointed out, I don't even know why. I didn't get what they were talking about. I took that for some reason as them being like, see, this has been America's fault the whole time. That's why the housing market is fucked up. But clearly it's like, oh, wait, no. They're just trying to like see like if she would have just fucking waited, it would have been all good.
It's
But
almost like God is a character in this movie, and he's like punishing Li Shang the entire time, like the entire time, like I don't know, in a way, because like that's just crazy. Like her bed
right.
doesn't even fit, and it's like a luxury apartment. Like, what is going on? What kind of bed wouldn't fit like in any apartment? Like,
Right,
it's crazy.
exactly. What
It
up,
doesn't even.
Fable? Thanks for popping in, brother.
It's so insane. It drives me crazy. I love it though.
Before we go ahead and rate this bad boy, just like looking at the list of kills here, couple worth fucking pointing out. The eyeball one. Love a good
Oh,
eyeball kill. Folks, you would have been proud of this one. Just gets like it's a creative way to do it. There's two parts to it. The way that they pop out the eyeball through the back of the head, fucking awesome. It looks so good. But later on, when the guy comes into the apartment and steps on
oh,
the way
so
he steps on
gross.
the eye, both when the eye explodes and the way that it looks on the bottom of his shoe, is just
Disgusting.
so fucking perfect. And like, I don't know, it's comical to me. Um, the guy gets the bong in the neck. I like that. Like the bong in the neck is
Yeah.
cool, but then the way that it starts filling up with the blood afterwards is badass. The board through the mouth. Broken husband gets the cheating husband gets the broken neck. I guess we've pretty much touched. Oh, the one guy, the guy that gets the guts, gets the fingers chopped off, and the
Yeah.
way that they slide across and knock the record off the record player or the needle off
That
the record.
that scene is there's so many things happening in that scene. I can't imagine the planning it would have taken to film that because oh my goodness, it's an insane scene. Holy cow.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's like I said, man, this is like the hidden gem of Summer Abroad. So I really appreciate the pick because this is one I would have never added to the list that I'm so glad I did. Like as soon as I watched this, I sent it to my buddy Robbie. I'm like, bro, put this on your fucking must watch list. Or just like everybody that I see, I'm gonna be telling them, you gotta watch Dream Home if you're into slashers because it's top notch. It really like I was sitting there thinking today, like, what are the best character study slashers of all time? I've mentioned a few of American Psycho. Maybe I don't know if I would count Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer as a slasher, but it's kind of in a similar vein. But for my money, this is one of the best and one of my favorite of its kind that I've ever seen. So, and as far as Hong Kong films, I've seen fucking like almost none. Do you have any by the chance off top of your head, like Chinese
Uh
horror film recommendations you could give me?
Not horror film, and probably because you mentioned they can't do supernatural stuff, which actually I didn't know that. That was really interesting.
Hmm.
But there's like the movie that The Departed is based off of is a
Oh,
Hong
really?
Kong film called Infernal Affairs. Yeah.
That's interesting.
So
Infernal
yeah,
Affairs. All
yeah,
right. And I fucking love The Departed. I did
and
not
it's a
know
whole
that.
trilogy. Yeah,
Really?
yeah,
That's crazy. My man Fable down there saying a bunch of good action films, which I could see. And we were having a conversation back a while ago, and I was like, does China make movies? Because I just like, I don't know. It's not in the way that you hear about like Japanese J horror, K horror. And
yeah,
part of it obviously is because of what you said. But or what I said, and then you repeated.
yeah.
But all right, so let's go ahead and get up out this bitch. Give me your final thoughts and your rating on Dream Home 2010. I'm assuming none of you guys in the chat have seen it, but if you happen to have seen it, please put your ratings down below.
4 out of 5 easily. I love this movie. I think it's brilliant. I think it's well made. I think it's got great satire, which is so rare these days.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fantastic. You know what? 4.5 out of 5.
I love it. I love it,
Yeah,
man. I really it's weird because you can't, can you compare certain things to other things? Is I kind of I respect funny games more,
yeah,
right? But
yeah,
as far if you're comparing slashers to slashers, this is one of, like I said, like one of the
yeah,
best, some of the best kills and some of the best themes, not just in character study slashers, but any fucking slasher ever. So
yeah,
I think I'm right there with you, man. If a 4.5 for both of them, for Funny Games and Dream Home, just like super fucking recommendable movies to the right people. To,
yeah.
to the to the
Absolutely.
wrong people, neither of these are at all
Yeah,
recommendable. So
you may never see that person again if you
yeah,
recommend either of these to the wrong person. They will
exactly, man.
block you.
So let's go ahead and get up out of here. Again, I appreciate the hell out of you, man. These are two fantastic picks. Funny Games, Dream Home, highly recommend them. Coming up next week on the channel, a short distance between here and now because it's coming up on Thursday. We're going to the UK and we're doing The Ritual from 2017 by David Bruckner. This is my boy Missing Links pick, a movie that I've seen once. I really enjoyed it, but for whatever reason, I can't remember like how this thing ends. I remember how it starts. I know there's some weird monster shit going on out in the woods, but I can't remember the movie. So I'm really looking forward to checking that one out. So again, that's Thursday at 8 o'clock right here on Blood Splatter Chatter. But where can people find more of what you're doing out there on the interwebs, Wes?
I am on TikTok and Instagram. I believe my name is the same on both.
Oh,
Wespresso Films or West Talk Movies for my TikTok. You can search West Talk Movies and that'll pull me up as well. I'm on Letterboxd at Wespresso. It's like espresso, but with a W in front of it.
I love the fucking name, dude. I love it.
Yeah. And that's about it right now. I'm going to be starting a podcast hopefully soon as I can figure out all the details, called the Film Sonder Podcast, but that is not up yet. So keep an eye out for that.
And don't steal his name. Don't steal that fucking name.
Yeah, don't steal it. And yeah, I'm so glad you like these movies, and thank you so much for having me back. I love coming on this podcast. I love this show. I think it's great. I always have a blast talking with you.
Oh yeah, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate you too. These two movies are two of my favorites. I'm so glad you liked them, and I'm so happy that you brought me on to talk about them.
Hell yeah, man. I appreciate the shit out of it. It's like one of my favorite things is finding new movies and knowing that like we can share these movies with other. I really hope not just that like people out there will watch these two movies if you haven't, but I'm telling you, man, I hope there's just one person, even if there's one person that is kind of going through the experience that I'm going through and discovering all these movies. I don't give a fuck if you watch the show. Just watch the movies that we're talking about. Look at the list that we've put together for Summer Abroad. Check them out because it's like this is like the best like series of movies that I've ever watched in a row. Like so many 5 out of 5s are just like amazing movies. But thank you guys popping into the chat. Fable, Two Gun, E. Appreciate the shit out of you guys popping in on a Sunday. And you guys on the rewind, I appreciate the shit out of you. Make sure you're hitting the like button, sub up to the channel, all that good stuff. And again, come hang out with us on Thursday. We're talking The Ritual. Thank you guys, and we'll see you.